Hey guys, how's it going? So I hope you're doing well today, and I hope all is going good in your world. So for today's video, I wanted to start a new series, and this is going to be about the complete history of some radio stations. It's mostly going to be FM stations, but once in a while we might throw in an AM station just for grits and schmiggles. I got inspired to do this. I was actually thinking about something the other day. There used to be this show on 101.1 WRIF in Detroit, Michigan called Night Call. I think that's what it was called. It was either Night Talk or Night Call, but I believe it was Night Call. The hosts were Peter Werby and WLIN Jordan. Well, on this one particular show, Peter Werby and WLIN Jordan were off that night. And they had these two guys on there, and I couldn't tell you who they were, but they were talking about the complete history of the FM dial in Detroit. All the way from 92.3 to 107.5, and it was pretty interesting. And there were people called in, sharing their memories and stuff like that, and it was a fun show. I kind of wish I would have taped it, to be honest with you, but I thought I would take the idea of that and kind of put my own take on it. So to start off, we're going to talk about the history of 92.3 FM in Detroit, Michigan for this video. And then, as I say, I might add some more videos in the future, but I thought let's start with the beginning of the commercial FM dial and work our way up. So 92.3, like a lot of other FM radio stations, signed on in the early 60s. Now, there was a construction permit for the station, I believe, in the very late 50s. And the construction permit was given the call letters WIPE, which is kind of funny, like wipe. Wipe It Clean, we're the cleanest station in Detroit. That was kind of stupid. But the station had not been put on the air. And the original owner sold the license. Then the new owner came in and signed the station on with new call letters, which were WLIN, which WLIN stood for Lincoln Park, Michigan, if you don't know, is a suburb of Detroit. So WLIN at one point featured an all-jazz format, and then it moved towards an MOR format, which was called Middle of the Road, which was like the precursor to Hot Adult Contemporary, or whatever you would want to kind of call that at the time. Well, after a few years, I think it was about 1967, WLIN was sold to new owners. And the new owners already owned 1130 WCAR. That was the original station WCAR was on before the calls were on 1190, or before the calls were on 1090. But the new owners came in and they changed 92.3's call letters to WCAR-FM. And I believe they were simulcasting each other at one point, but then shortly after, the stations were programmed separately. And a middle-of-the-road format stayed on 92.3 throughout the 1970s. Then in 1977, I believe it was, Golden West Broadcasting purchased 92.3. And they unveiled a new format called Great American Country. And this was like a syndicated format. I believe the format was on reel-to-reel tape, as stuff usually wasn't satellite fed back then. The technology wasn't quite there yet for radio. So the stuff was on reel-to-reel tape, and they would get new tapes every so often. And this was syndicated through, and I believe I'm saying this correctly, Drake Chenault. and which syndicated some other formats at the time. And this was really the second time country music had been tried on the FM side of the dial in Detroit. The first time was on 93.9 CKLW, which of course was across the river in Windsor, Ontario. But that really never made an impact. And Great American Country on WCAR FM really didn't make much of an impact either. So the owners decided to take the station in a live local direction, and they changed the call letters to WTWR and changed the name to Tower 92, which featured it was like adult top 40 mixed with some oldies, and they hired a fairly large size air staff, and really put forth a major effort into the station. A lot of notable radio personalities actually were on the station for a time. And the station's, what do I want to say? I'm losing my train of thought. The station's ratings were so-so. They weren't quite what Golden West thought that they should be. So what the station did was they shifted the format to more of mainstream top 40. And this was, I believe this was around 1981 or so, early 1982. But the thing was at the time, and I believe this coincided pretty close, was 96.3 switched from WJR-FM to WHYT-FM, and 96.3 unveiled a top 40 format. And 92.3 had done so about the same time. And despite seemingly like the station was starting to get a little traction, Golden West decided to give up on Tower 92. And they decided to go country once again. Now, 1130 had a country format, and by this time the call letters in 1130 were WCXI. Well, they changed 92.3's call letters to WCXI FM to match 1130, although the stations were programmed separately. Golden West's strategy of this was to have two radio stations take on one. 106.7 W4 Country was doing pretty well. And W4 Country had signed on in early 1981, and it was like a hit right away. And the ratings were very good. So Golden West, again thought they could have a more classic country station on the AM and a hit country station on the FM, and that would pull listeners away from W4 Country. And as country, 92.3, they had a commercial that basically said no bull country 92.3. And actually, I think I have an old commercial I actually do have an old commercial uploaded here on the channel where it shows like a bull on the radio like talking really fast and everything. And basically it was 92.3 country, country without the bull. And country on 92.3 did okay, but it wasn't exactly hitting it out of the park either. W4 Country was winning in the ratings every time, and I don't believe 92.3 ever surpassed them in the ratings. And so as time went on, the station just kind of floated along. So in 1986, Golden West decided to sell 92.3 off and 1130 off. The buyer was Shamrock Broadcasting. Now this is where it gets a little interesting. Shamrock already owned W4 Country, so this was really a boon for W4 Country because they were buying a competitor out. The thing was, however, that back in back then, under FCC rules, you were only allowed to own one FM station in a market. So Shamrock already owned 106.7, which was a cash cow, and they sure weren't going to give that up. But so what they did was they decided to keep 1130. And then they spun 92.3 off to a company called Fritz Broadcasting. And Fritz Broadcasting owned 1270 WXYT. So they figured if we had an FM station, then we could sell more ads and that would bring us in a little more revenue. 1270 stayed talk radio, but 92.3's format changed. Now, I am not sure about this, and I could be wrong about this. I'm not sure exactly what went on. But when Fritz bought the station, I do wonder if there was a stipulation about, like sort of like a stipulation, like a non-compete clause, like the new format would not be country, and that as long as they owned 92.3, they could not put a country format on the station. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but it's just speculation or a guess. Well, anyway, Fritz dumped country for hot adult contemporary or adult contemporary, excuse me, as 92 Music, WNTM. So the call letter stood for 92 Music. And 92 Music had no local presence whatsoever. It was completely, I believe it was on reel-to-reel tape, maybe at first, but then it was satellite fed. I'm not positive about that. I believe it may have been reel-to-reel at first. But the station was not local, no local hosts or anything like that. 92 Music's focus, they made their focus solely on music. I mean, no weather, no sports, no long DJ talk, and no traffic, which that's kind of weird. But just music. And a sample playlist of 92 Music would be like Steve Winwood, Valerie, Moody Blues in Your Wildest Dreams, Phil Collins, One More Night, Swing Out Sister, Breakout, Till Tuesday, Voices Carry, Cyndi Lauper, Girls Just Want to Have Fun, kind of stuff like that. Stuff that was popular in the mid-'80s up until the present time. And the problem was with 92 Music was that there were already a lot of competitors. WOMC 104.3 had an adult contemporary format. WNIC 100.3 had an adult contemporary format. Magic 94.7 had an adult contemporary format, and 97.1 WJOI did, except they were much more mellower. So with no real local presence or anything like that, 92.3's format sunk to the bottom of the ratings, and 92 Music pretty much made no impact in the market. So during this time, a new format was being developed in Los Angeles. In early 1987, a radio station in Los Angeles came on the air on 94.7, and that was called 94.7 The Wave, which was the precursor to smooth jazz. The format was called New Age Contemporary, and it contained like a mix of new age music and smooth jazz music. And the format was successful almost right away. So the owners of 94.7 in Los Angeles at the time, which was Metro Media, decided to syndicate this format to other stations, and a couple markets picked up the format. 106.7 in Chicago and 107.3 in Cleveland, which both had the Z-Rock format, flipped to the Wave. And there was a station, I believe, in Kansas City that flipped to the format, but they didn't call it the Wave, they called it something different. Well, Fritz Broadcasting decided that Detroit needed a station like the Wave. So, in late December of 1987, 92.3 The Wave was born. And like its other counterparts in other markets, the Wave featured new age music, and like smooth jazz music, and a couple of like light adult contemporary hits. And the first song on the Wave was "If You Love Somebody, Set Them Free" by Sting. And a playlist on the Wave would look like something like Larry Carlton, Smiles and Smiles to Go, Bob James and David Sanborn, Maputo, Enya, Orinoco Flow. Let's see, like you would have artists like Dave Grusin, the Yellow Jackets, Brenda Russell, David Benoit, stuff like that. So essentially, it was a smooth jazz station, but there was more of an emphasis on on new age and adult contemporary music, whereas later smooth jazz stations had more of an R&B kind of feel to them. And like 92 Music, this station was mostly satellite fed, but the Wave did add some local hosts a little bit later on. And what was kind of interesting about this station was at the top of the hour and like at the half hour, they would announce it, like they would say something like, it's the top of the hour, beep. And they would have these like between commercial breaks, kind of like before like another music set started, they would have these, I don't know how you would quite describe this, like these 2-minute or so kind of short stories. Like one was about an alien landing, and the people in the background were like, "It's an alien, what is it? What could it be?" And then the alien asked them if they knew Spuds MacKenzie, who of course was the mascot for what was it, for Michelob? It was either for Michelob or Miller, but the alien asked if they knew Spuds MacKenzie. And then like another one talked about like, it was like two lawyers talking together, and they were like in court, and then in the background, the judge is like, case adjourned or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, let's go get some tacos." So it was a little quirky for its time, but there was a lot of weird stuff that came out in the mid-'80s, so I guess it was kind of fitting for its time. I mean, you had a TV show like Alf, for example. I mean, you couldn't have had a TV show like that at any other time. So the Wave was very reminiscent of its era. And at one point, near the end of the run of the Wave, they actually had a section at Harmony House, which was a chain of local music stores in the Detroit area back at the time. They had a Wave section, like with CDs and tapes and records of artists that were played on the Wave. And so the Wave was a pretty good effort, but the ratings just weren't quite where they wanted them to be. The format didn't take off as good as it did in Los Angeles or like it did in Cleveland, for example, which had the Wave for many years. So the Fritz Broadcasting decided to once again change 92.3's format. So in December of 1989, they changed it to 92 The Mix. And The Mix was, at first it was kind of an adult, like a hot adult, like a rhythmic hot adult contemporary station. They were playing like a lot of upbeat kind of music, like the Information Society, I Want to Know What You're Thinking, Wang Chung, Everybody Have Fun Tonight, Paul Abdul, Opposites Attract, stuff like that. And the format's ratings had improved, but by about 1990 or so, they started taking the station in more of a urban adult contemporary direction. They kind of found that there was a hole for kind of a soul music format, kind of a black, I guess you would say black adult contemporary format, so to speak, which is urban adult contemporary. So the station started to evolve into urban adult contemporary, and the station became very popular pretty fast. And they stuck with this format throughout the 90s, throughout various ownership changes, and the station has the format to this day. And it's still known as The Mix, except a little bit later on they added Mix 92.3 as it's known today. So that's the history of 92.3 FM in Detroit. Did I miss anything, guys? Did I get everything right? I kind of took like everything I knew about the station from discussing it on message boards back in the day to talking with people about radio and stuff like that. So if I mix something up, no pun intended, let me know. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. I want to thank you so much for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And as always, guys, have a great rest of your day.